Hi, I'm Kristina, and my daughter-in-law texted me the night my husband was dying. You're not family. You can't enter the ICU. She locked me out like I was a stranger. But that text? It wasn't the beginning, it was the final slap after years of silence, lies and betrayal. They sold my house, erased my name, called me just the help in my own home. But that night, something shifted. You ever been pushed so far? You finally push back? The morning started slow like most do now. I brewed my coffee the same way I always do, half strength, no sugar, and let the soft hum of the gospel station roll through the kitchen. They were playing Mahalia Jackson, one of the old recordings. Her voice had this way of filling every crack in the room, even the ones time put in my heart. I sat by the window, watching the sun barely peek through the blinds, warming nothing but memory. On the table were old photographs. Lark as a baby, holding his first basketball, his smile missing one front tooth. I picked up one where he was maybe 10, wearing that crooked little bow tie to church. I whispered, "You used to call me your rock." I meant it. I wasn't just his mother. I was his anchor. Outside, Southside Chicago was waking up slow too. You could hear the scrape of shovels on sidewalks, folks greeting each other with that everyday worn-down warmth only our kind can stretch into something sacred. This was our block, mostly black, mostly proud, mostly holding on. I'd planned to bring Lark a pot of soup and his father's old watch. It still ticked barely, but it ticked, and I thought maybe, just maybe, holding something that had survived might help him survive too. He was in ICU, but last night Corrine told me it was stable. "Just keep praying, Mama Kay," she said. So I did. But something had been sitting wrong in my chest lately. I hadn't seen anything from the family group chat in days. Thought maybe my phone was acting up, or maybe they'd been quiet. I brushed the thought away. Then the text came. Buzz. Just one. From Corrine. "You're not family. You can't enter the ICU. Only immediate family allowed." I stared at it, jaw tightening, hands still sticky from the dishwater. "Not family?" I reread it. Again. "Not family?" I sat down slow, like the weight of those words dropped me. I carried that boy through nights of fever, wiped up vomit, watched him break his wrist falling off that damn skateboard, and now I'm not family? I scrolled up. Nothing. No birthday photos, no prayer circles, no "love you, Mama Kay." The entire thread was gone. They'd removed me. I didn't cry. Not yet. I just stared at the wall and let the silence answer me. Then I got up, put on my coat. The old burgundy silk scarf Clarence gave it to me on our 13th anniversary, wrapped it twice around my neck. If I wasn't family, why was it me still holding on to all the memories? I needed to see my baby. The wind was cutting, biting, even through the scarf. The streets looked the same, but something in me was cracking. When I got to the hospital, I went straight to the desk. "I'm here to see Lark Stevenson," his mother. The woman didn't even look up. Corrine left instructions. No visitors outside immediate family. "I am his mother." She paused. "I'm sorry. I pulled out my ID. It had my name. His last name didn't matter. Behind her, a nurse, Tasha, the one I mentored years ago, turned her face. I saw it in her eyes. Guilt. She wouldn't meet mine. I didn't make a scene. I just sat in the lobby, right there by the double doors, for hours, watching people rushing, hug, cry, laugh, some left with their loved ones. I stayed. I stared at my reflection in the glass, old, still, alone. They walked past me like I was invisible, and I sat, heart thudding behind my ribs, quiet but screaming on the inside. I remembered things. Raising Lark alone while Clarence worked night shifts, teaching him how to tie his tie. Buying Corrine that first wedding dress, paid it off in 3 parts, but I made sure it was lace. She called me second mama then. Now? Now, I wasn't even allowed in the room where my baby might take his last breath. A voice low, behind me, "She's still here?" followed by soft laughter. I swallowed hard. That laugh hit deeper than the text. I wanted to yell, but I didn't. Maybe I taught them too well to stand tall. Maybe they stood so tall they forgot who gave them the ground beneath their feet. I stood, walked out slowly, not because I gave up, but because sometimes walking away is the only way to hold on to dignity when others try to strip it from you. Silence doesn't mean I accept it. Sometimes silence is the breath before truth breaks free. Evening came fast. The house felt colder than the streets. I placed the scarf gently beside me on the chair. The soup still sat on the stove, untouched. My hands were cold, not from the weather, something else. Then the phone lit up. Another notification. Corrine changed the family access password. My fingers didn't tremble from age this time. They trembled with knowing. I whispered, "If I'm not family, then whose house have they been living in?" Coming back home felt strange, like stepping into a house that no longer belonged to me. I took my shoes off at the door habit, but this time I hesitated. That old familiar creak in the hallway didn't greet me like it used to. It felt colder, quieter, like the walls knew something I didn't. I stood there a moment, keys still in my hand. "It's strange," I murmured to no one. You pay every bill, but somehow they make you feel like a visitor. The house hadn't changed much, but it also hadn't stayed the same. The family photos on the wall had shifted. Lark and Corrine's wedding portrait sat front and center now. My wedding photo with Clarence was missing. I checked the bookshelf gone. My favorite chair had been pushed to the corner. A new lamp replaced the one Clarence rewired himself when we couldn't afford a new one. I walked from room to room like a ghost, seeing but not touching. I could feel my presence slowly being erased. Later that afternoon, I went into Clarence's old study, not out of spite, just to find clarity. I needed to know where I stood. I opened the filing cabinet, pulled out folders we hadn't looked at in years, tax papers, old receipts, his veterans' paperwork. And then I found it. A manila envelope, labeled in his blocky handwriting, "Trustee transfer, emergency only." Inside were 2 things. a letter, and a stack of documents. My hands trembled as I unfolded the paper. Clarence's voice came back to me in his words. If they ever forget who held us together, remind them. You are the trustee of this estate. You're the reason we still have a roof. If anything ever happens to me, it's yours. All of it. I sank into the chair. I wasn't just the mother. I was the one he trusted to carry this family through whatever storm came. The house, my house, was in my name. The documents said it plain. Legal authority. And yet they acted like I was the outsider. So now I knew. Corrine had to have seen this, had to know, and chose not to speak on it. I put the papers back in the envelope and held it in my lap like armor. Later that evening, I heard voices in the kitchen, laughing. Corrine was on the phone, saying something about a family dinner on Saturday. To update the family on Lark's condition, I wasn't invited. They didn't even try to whisper, just talked like I wasn't even there. Make sure you bring Aunt Debbie and Cousin Keisha, Corrine said. It's important they hear from us directly. Us, not me. No mention of Mama Chris, just silence. I leaned against a hallway wall and stared at the family calendar. My birthday was still written in pen 2 weeks from now. But I knew none of them would say a word when it came. This wasn't just about ICU. This was about erasure. A part of me wanted to march into that kitchen and ask straight up, when did I stop mattering? But I didn't. I just stood there, listening, remembering the woman who once called me second mama. Now she walked through my house like it was hers. I went back to my room, sat in the quiet, thought about how easy it is for folks to rewrite stories when the storyteller stays silent. The next afternoon, Miss Alma dropped by. She brought banana pudding, still warm. Always did know when something wasn't right. She sat on the porch with me, didn't ask questions right away. Just Saturday. How long you gonna let them forget who raised that boy? She asked finally, dipping a spoon into the bowl. I didn't answer at first. I thought if I stayed quiet, they'd come back around. She looked at me over her glasses. Sometimes silence don't bring peace. It just clears space for disrespect. I let that sit a moment. It stung, but it was true. You raised Lark with your own 2 hands, she said. You kept this house. You fed 'em, clothed 'em, held 'em together. Now they're walking past you like you furniture. I nodded slowly. They don't even see me anymore. They see you, she corrected. They just don't think you do nothing. That's the difference. That night, I went to the kitchen and laid the trustee documents on the dining table. Not hidden, not dramatic, just there, where they couldn't pretend not to see it. I wrote one note, just one. We'll talk when you're ready to treat me like family. I folded my scarf, not to put it away, but to prepare. Something had shifted, not in them, in me. I arrived at the ICU early the next morning, hoping that maybe Corrine's restrictions had softened overnight, but the lobby, the lights were harsh and cold. My breath came easier in the quiet, though the ache behind my ribs hadn't lifted. I walked toward the desk, determined, as if just showing my face might undo the damage done. A familiar nurse, someone I once trained, stepped aside. She leaned in, voice low. "Did Corrine explain to you what she filed?" I stopped. My heart twisted. I asked her, "What do you mean?" Her eyes hovered, then she whispered, "There's a document, Corrine signed it. Only immediate family is allowed. She made sure your name wasn't on the list." My breath left me. That barrier at ICU. Earlier, it wasn't hospital policy. It was her choice. They cleared the room for her narrative. Betrayal exploded in my chest. I sank into a chair in the waiting room and stared at my reflection in the glass door. Nothing but a silhouette. I felt smaller, diminished. I had held this family together, but now the legal papers to knock me out of my place. Rage simmered, cold and steady. I thought of all the years I stood behind Lark's back, shielding him, carrying burdens, and now they used paper to hide me. Moments later, I asked my nephew where the updates were being circulated. He hesitated, then pulled out his phone and opened a chat. Lark Support Circle. My name was nowhere. It was as if I ceased to exist. Entire messages, planning tests, prayers, family rotations. I was erased. They had a private life without me, the mother who stood by them. I felt the foundation shift beneath me. I thought, I gave them my world. Now they've made me a stranger in it. My heart rocked with sorrow and anger. I gripped the arms of the chair until my fingers ached. Needing air, I stepped outside. The sun was grey, the parking lot damp. I pressed my forehead against the glass doors. If love could heal, I would have fixed him already. But I wasn't even allowed beside him. I called my sister in Baton Rouge. I couldn't form the full words, only they left me out again. Her response crackled through tears. Sometimes family ain't blood. Sometimes family ain't even love. Those words echoed in my bones. That evening, at home, I went to my husband's locked drawer. Inside lay his journal. I opened pages I'd avoided. One entry caught in my throat. If I go first, promise me you won't let them forget who built this family's roots. Tears blurred the ink. I wept quietly, not for him, but to feel seen again. I told myself, they might not call me family, but they can't erase my name from the foundation. A knock came late that night. I opened the door. Corrine stood there, poised. No apology, just a bland line. "We need to talk about what you're trying to do." I met her gaze and said gently, "No, baby. We need to talk about what you already did." I closed the door behind me, knowing the conversation had already begun inside me. Micah met me at the cafe off 73rd, the one with the peeling green awning and stale muffins. I picked it because it was quiet, not for the food. He walked in looking like he didn't want to stay long. I stirred my coffee. No sugar, didn't even taste it. "Micah," I said, my voice steady, "I need to know if you agree with Corrine, or if you just keep quiet so she doesn't raise hell." He stared at his cup, then at the wall behind me. Mama, you know how she gets. I gave him time. Nothing else came. It's not that serious, he mumbled. I blinked. That hurt hit deep. It wasn't just Corrine. He let it happen. My own son, watching the door close on me and saying nothing. I swallowed the shake in my voice. He was grown. I couldn't raise him twice. You were raised better than this, I said. He nodded, but still didn't meet my eyes. That same afternoon, I went to the community center, sat in the back during the coat drive. Some cousins were there, young ones. They talked loud like grown folks couldn't hear. Corrine really stepped up, huh? Held everybody together when Lark first got sick. Another one added, "Remember that fundraiser she did? That was big." I sat there, smiling on the outside, but inside, I was burning slow. That fundraiser? I mortgaged my car for it. Every tray of baked ziti and banana pudding came out of my kitchen. I didn't do it for applause, but I didn't do it to disappear either. They're rewriting my story, and I'm still breathing. Later that evening, I walked over to the church. Deacon Harold was locking up. He saw me, smiled, sat on the steps with me like it was planned. I let it out in pieces. He just listened. Then he said, "Sometimes folks pretend you ain't in the room 'cause your truth too loud. And baby, the roots, they always outlive the branches." That stuck. I left there knowing I didn't need anyone's validation. I'd carried too much for too long to ask for space in the story I helped write. That night, Corrine messaged me. Not a phone call, just words on a screen. "Please, don't make this ugly. Think of the family," I replied. "I've thought of nothing else for 30 years. Then I logged onto the family Facebook page one. They rarely let me post in, and wrote just one line. "Erasure is still violence. Silence no longer lives here." The phone rang fast. "Micah, Mama, what are you doing?" I spoke soft. "Just sending a little ripple before the storm." He was quiet. I hung up. Hours passed. I got ready for bed, turned off the lights, walked into my room, and there it was. A box on my bed. Inside, a photo, me, Lark, and his father, torn right down the middle. A yellow post-it stuck to the side. "You wanted to be remembered. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat on the edge of the bed, held that torn piece of my life in my lap, and whispered, 'Now you've done it.' Micah caught me around noon. Said he wanted to make peace. Said, Corrine, cooked. She wants to talk things out, he added, like it meant something. I already knew what it was. It wasn't peace. It was performance. Still, I said yes. Sometimes you don't avoid the storm. You walk into it so it knows your name. I laid my clothes out across the bed, simple, black, nothing flashy, not grieving, reclaiming. Before I walked out, I looked again at that torn photo on my nightstand. I whispered, "Not tonight. Tonight, you'll remember me whole." Micah's house smelled like my old pot roast recipe. Not hers, mine. Corrine met me at the door with a hug that didn't touch her soul. "Glad you could come," she smiled. The table was already set, my old china I left behind when they boxed up my kitchen, like I was already gone. Somebody else said grace. Somebody else sat at the head. Too many smiles, too much sweet tea. But under it all, everything bitter. Dinner moved slow, laughter forced, compliments traded like poker chips. And then Corrine spoke loud, like she was accepting an award. I just did what had to be done, she said. Some people, they don't know when to let go of control. But families need leadership during crisis. I felt it then, that tug in my gut, that pressure on the back of my neck. But I stayed quiet. They want silence to prove they're right. I reached into my purse, pulled out my phone, set it gently on the table, hit play. Her voice filled the room, recorded from earlier that week. You know what she is? Dead weight. I mean it. Once Lark's gone, she won't matter. And Micah just can't see it. Nobody chewed. Nobody moved. She's too old to fight, too proud to beg, easy to push out. Just keep her name off things and let her fade. Micah's face cracked like glass under pressure. His fork dropped. Corrine tried to speak. Couldn't find her mouth. I stood, calm, steady. I built this family's walls. Don't act surprised when they speak for me. Then I looked at my son. You remember what your daddy said? Respect ain't love, it's proof of it. Corrine stammered. That's not, I mean, you're twisting it. No, baby, I said, soft but firm. You meant every word, and I heard you loud and clear. I grabbed my purse, walked out, heels clicking on the hardwood like punctuation at the end of a sentence. The silence behind me, that was their music. When I got home, the night felt too still. I made some tea, sat in the dark. Then the phone rang. Mrs. Porter, the voice said. It's the night nurse. Lark's awake, and he's asking for his mother. My eyes closed slow, tears fell quiet. My chest rose like the world had turned toward me again. I walked to the window, put my hand on the glass. He's still my son. The message came just after sunset. Tonight's gathering is final. We need closure. I didn't respond. Didn't have to. My silence said I'd be there. I knew it was Corrine's hand writing those words, even if Micah sent them. But this wasn't for her. This wasn't even about Lark anymore. This was for me. To draw a line, not a circle. As I drove, I passed our old neighborhood. Kids still played on porches. One boy rode a bike with no shoes, just like Micah used to. Those porches, those trees, I built that, brick by brick, prayer by prayer. A burgundy scarf, faded and soft, hung from my rearview mirror. Echo had given it to me after my husband's funeral. I pulled it down, wrapped it once around my neck, not for comfort, for armor. I whispered to myself, I go not to beg, I go to stop being erased. Their house buzzed when I walked in full of people I hadn't seen in months. Corrine greeted me first, lips painted too red, voice too smooth. I'm glad you came, she said. Tonight's about healing. I nodded. But healing don't come from the one who inflicted the wound without first owning the knife. She stood in the middle of the living room and gave a speech like she was running for mayor. It's time, she said. For truth, forgiveness, and letting go. But we must be honest, someone's been creating narrations for their own benefit. Every eye flicked toward me like a breeze had shifted. Then came the dagger. I even heard you recorded conversations without telling us. I didn't flinch, just folded my hands. Let that land. Let them sit in their own unease. I didn't need to defend myself, not right away. Later, folks began to mingle, fill their plates, talk about nothing. I stepped into the hallway for air. That's where she found me. Corrine. You're trying to manipulate Lark, she hissed. Whispers, oh debts, playing the mama card again. I looked at her, measured. Then I said, you once said they only wanted those who fit. You forgot how strong roots are. You can't outgrow them. You just expose yourself trying. She stepped back. I stepped forward. Then left her standing. But her words weren't done chasing me. Back in the living room, she clutched a microphone. About to show some tribute video, she turned to the tech boy and said too loud, too unaware, don't let her hear that she wasn't supposed to know that part. The room stilled. Phones were already out. The slip had no rewind. I walked to the center. You slipped, I said, loud enough. And what you meant wasn't hidden. I heard it. So did they. Her face drained. Lark stared at her like he didn't know what he was looking at. I didn't wait for applause or answers. I turned, walked slow toward the door. Wait, Corrine called. You can't leave like that. I paused, scarf trailing behind me like memory. I'll leave, I said, but I won't vanish. I woke up to my phone lit up like someone threw a match in the summer dark. Notifications, alerts, TikTok shares my dinner slip had gone public. My face, Corrine's words, the room edge in frame. The first comment I saw, wasn't that his mother in the back? Another, who edited this? That was powerful. And bio too. She looks like she's waiting for the check to clear. Background actress in her own life. They were talking about me like I didn't exist until now. But now, here I am, standing in the frame they tried to deny me. I closed my eyes, breathed slow. The louder they tried to silence me, the clearer they'll hear my truths. By midday, Azia walked into the room. Sweet girl, eyes soft, she said. Mama Kristina, why didn't you stand up when they said bad things about you? That cut deeper than the public shaming. I knelt beside her. Sometimes, I said, standing up isn't about yelling. It's about holding steady so silence carries weight. She frowned, confused. But I would have said something. I smiled gently. That's because you know courage early. You trust your voice. I taught you that for a reason. I remembered her small fingers threading through cloth, me guiding her hands. Trust your hands, they build your value. That lesson echoed now strong. I left the house, went to Gideon's. He unlocked boxes I forgot. Existed audio tapes, letters, receipts, old health charts. Raw truth waiting. We sat at his table, stacking each piece carefully, verifying timestamps. gathering witnesses, nurse, Tasha, Alma, everything tied. "It's not begging now," I said as I arranged the paper. "It's writing," Gideon nodded. "When you let truth stand tall, lies shrink." By afternoon, I drove into Corrine's block, slow, observant. People glanced, phones out. I placed a sign in her yard, quiet, simple. Truth has a way of coming home. She stepped onto the porch, mid-love, phone in hand. Her face froze when she saw me and the sign. No words passed. Her expression dropped like glass. I left before she could find one. That evening, my phone buzzed again. A message from unknown, a video file. I hit play. Corrine, rehearsing her speech, smiling, laughing, calling me background noise, making me an afterthought in her script. 20 minutes of her owning the narrative. I sat still, eyes steady. Then I whispered, "Let's see how loud the quiet can be." I pushed open the double doors and walked in, holding the envelope I'd kept sealed until this night. The room was full, faces turned, cameras pointed, corridors of tension. Corrine's tribute video flickered across the screen behind her. Clips of my husband's sermons, her laughter in the church foyer, edited to look like she and I were partners all along. But every eye in the room shifted away from that illusion when I entered. I placed the envelope gently on the table. The hush that fell made my ears ring. I said in a low, steady voice, "This belongs to the house you claim as yours." Whispers shot around the room like splintering glass. Corrine froze. A guest turned from his plate. Others lowered their heads. I broke the seal. No theatrics, just calm resolve. I opened the letter and read passages he'd left, clear as gospel. Words that named me trustee, that disputed silence, that tied the foundation of every promise to my name. The room cracked open. Some gasped. Micah's face paled. He looked at her as if seeing her for the first time. Then I pressed play on my phone. Her voice filled the room, her own mask slipping off. The audio she thought hidden, mocking my age, saying I was background noise, vowing to silence me. Eyes wetted, chairs shifted. No one knew whether to breathe first. Corrine tried to speak. Her voice trembled. "You took that." I held up my hand. "You slipped, and what you meant has been loud all along." I stepped back. Silence stretched, pregnant and alive. I looked around. Neighbors blinking, church ladies whispering, her supporters shrinking into corners. I said softly, "When they show you who they are, believe them the first time." That line didn't need applause. It echoed. Corrine stood, stumbling, and fled into the hallway. I watched as people rose, murmurs rising behind me. Beyond the room, I heard her on the phone. "You turned it public too soon. Do you know what that does?" Her panic was confirmation. The walls, the windows, even the air was now listening. Her lies had no place to hide anymore. I slipped out, stepped into the night, my phone in hand. I texted Emery, "Get to the ICU. I need you before they spin another story." I drove in the quiet that comes after reckoning. Every red light and every silent block felt like breathing room. At the hospital, I entered Lark's room, like stepping into my own shadow's echo. The nurse nodded. His eyes opened. He reached. I grabbed his hand. "They tried to erase me," I whispered. "But he remembered." His lips moved soft, deliberate. Always. That was the moment. Truth didn't need to shout. It just stood there loud enough for all of us. The hospital room was still, except for the slow rhythm of machines and the light tapping of rain against the window. The sun had started to rise, just a pale gold line crawling up the edge of the blinds. I sat beside Lark, his hand resting in mine, his grip faint but sure. He blinked slowly, eyes tired but clear. He turned his head toward me and whispered, "You were always the heart, Kristina. They just didn't know it yet." I didn't cry. Not this time. I just nodded, squeezing his hand. He said he had something left to do, something that mattered. His voice rasped but steady. "There's a message. I made it. For them to hear, after I'm gone. I want them to know what's real." I leaned in closer, forehead almost touching his. "You sure?" He nodded again. I've never been more sure of anything. It wasn't a goodbye. It was a sealing of truth. Moment when nothing else needed saying. We just sat there, hands still touching, as the light moved across the floor, inch by inch. A week later, I found the letter. It was resting on the porch table, tucked under a smooth river rock. My name in Emery's handwriting, careful, nervous. I took it inside. Sat at the kitchen table, just me, the envelope, and the hum of the fridge. I opened it slowly, unfolding the paper like it might fall apart if I rushed. Her words hit soft but deep. She admitted how she let Corrine twist her up, how she stayed quiet when she should have asked questions, how fear made her forget what love looked like. She wrote, "I called you Mom in my heart every day, even when I didn't deserve to." Inside the envelope was a photo. Me holding her as a baby, smiling with tired eyes. On the back, she wrote, "You raised me with courage. I forgot that for a while." I laid the letter on the table, took a breath that felt like it had waited years to come out. My chest didn't hurt this time. It opened. By Saturday, I was ready. The garden was small, nothing fancy, but the chairs were full neighbors. A few church folks, a cousin or two who hadn't picked sides, plates of fried catfish, cornbread, and sweet tea circled the yard. No speeches, just warmth. Then came the video. We set up a little projector screen under the tree. The image flickered once, then Lark's face filled the space. Folks went quiet. Real quiet. "If you're watching this," he said, "then I ain't there to say it myself. But you need to know Kristina was always the bridge between all of us, between what we were and what we should have been." You could hear the wind rustle through the leaves. Some folks bowed their heads, others wiped their eyes. He ended with, "Don't build walls when you can plant gardens." People clapped softly. Not for show, but from somewhere deep. Corrine didn't come, and maybe that was best. Later, I knelt down in a fresh patch of dirt, dug my hands into the soil, slow and deliberate. I planted a rose bush red, like the one Lark brought me the night we said yes to forever. Then came others. One by one, folks dropped in flowers, little slips of paper, prayers whispered into the roots. I pulled the photo from Emery's letter from my pocket, folded it gently and laid it under the rose's base, beneath the soil, beneath the bloom. A small boy neighbor's grandson, maybe 6, tugged at my sleeve. "Are you the grandma who saved the family?" I looked at him, then around at the yard, at the faces, the food, the laughter starting to return. I smiled, just a little. "I guess I am." Then I whispered to myself, like a prayer, "Still, like dust, I rise." I stood up, dirt on my palms, sun warming my back. I looked straight ahead, right into the camera that Emery had set up quietly by the tree. My voice didn't shake. Family ain't always blood. Sometimes it's who stays when the storm hits.